Hello everyone, I'm Lee Carroll.
And I'm Monika Muryani.
Welcome to another program that we are calling Topics for Our Times. We're very aware that there are so many of you, who have been through so many things that are so hard, so difficult to deal with in life, and very hard to talk about to anybody. Some of you had family abuse when you were a child, even as an adult, some sexual abuse, not just as a child. Loss of your partner, and of course, loss of a child. We know that emotions get buried. Sometimes no one even knows some of the issues, the difficulties that you have had to deal with in your lives from day to day. That's what this program is about. So many of you simply keep quiet and you suffer. Never gets any better. There's no peace over it. You really can't talk to anybody about it. You cry at night, perhaps, for the rest of your life.
And yet there are a few of you who have worked this puzzle and you have found peace. You've found solace. How did you do it? How did these people do it? Well, that is what this program is all about, because there's so many kinds of situations and so many stories to tell that we wanted to bring you some real gems, some treasures, a peek into the lives of some of the people who have made a difference in their personal life, and to find out how they did that. Joining us today is Deborah DeLisi. She is a good personal friend of Lee and I. We've known her for years, and she's also a visionary artist. Her artwork has graced the covers of some of my books, the crime books that Lee has written, and also she's been instrumental in the artwork and creation of our Oracle card decks. Her story is one of true inspiration, filled with love and compassion. So welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you, Monika, and thank you, Lee. And some of you know me as the artist of Dr. Todd's pineal tones that he teaches. I've been doing that for many years, over a decade. And in doing that, I've had the good fortune of traveling with Lee and Monika and Dr. Todd to these spiritual events. And the wonderful thing about these events is that it opens you up to the many possibilities of human potential and being very positive about mastering the direction of your life, changing course when it's not working, and moving into a state of joy and happiness and light and love. And that's wonderful. And I know a lot of you have experienced that, but what happens when something comes along that you didn't plan on manifesting, something called a trauma, a personal tragedy that can shake your world and rattle the foundation of your life so profoundly that it brings you to your knees. Because sometimes life's experiences do come at us with a force that can knock the wind out of you and leave you struggling for your next breath. And when that happens, your life is shaken up so severely that it's like a 9.0 on your own personal Richter scale. And that's something that I've come to call a life quake. And let me begin my story here that I'll share with you. And I know a lot of you will resonate because I know I'm not alone in this. So 2014 was my year of living a global adventure and exploring with freedom. I was invited to Hawaii to spend a few months at a retreat center just doing what I do. And I decided this was a sign from the universe for me to trust in it. So I thought, this is going to be my year of adventure. I put all of my belongings in storage. I packed up my house, I packed up my car, that went in storage too. And I headed off for Hawaii, where I spent several months. I loved it there. I lived off the grid. It was fantastic. And I decided I'm only going to go where I'm invited and do what I do, and that's going to be my big adventure. So I went from Hawaii off to Australia, Mount Shasta, New York, and I decided to go to North Carolina to visit one of my daughters, Kate, who had just moved there about 6 months earlier. And from there, I was going to head over to Portugal and then on to Italy. So when I was visiting with my daughter, Kate, it was such a good visit. She was really happy and positive. We had a wonderful time. She showed me around. She had just started this new job. She had new roommates. Things were going her way, and we had a great time together. And when I left there, I remember saying to friends and family, like, she's launched. She's gone back and forth with her career and what to do with her life, but this time she's really launched, and I was so excited about that. What I wasn't prepared for, that 3 weeks later she would pass away. And that was my own personal life quake in September of 2014. And a life quake is an earthquake in your life. It disassembles your life in a few seconds. And it has no fault line. And I say that because I want you to know that when these things happen, there's no guilt that goes with it. You can't predict when and where a life quake will occur. And lacking a fault line, these things just happen, so I want you to know that you just can't prevent them. This is what life does. But what it also will do is disconnect you from the reality that you were living in and instantly plunges you into the world of grief and loss. A life quake, like an earthquake, leaves you in an environment that's somewhat familiar to you, but at the same time, it's completely strange. So after an earthquake, you'll look around and you might see a pile of bricks and be like, well, I think that was the building that I used to go to all the time. Or you'll see another trees fallen and things disassembled, and you'll be like, I think that was the road that I used to take to go to a certain place. So it's familiar, and yet it's completely discombobulated from what you saw. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And so with Kate, it was very sudden and unexpected. And my own friends and family, no one knew how to approach me. And a lot of them, because they're so uncomfortable with grief, they stayed at arm's length, and some even further than arm's length. And if you've gone through such a thing, you'll know what that's like, when people distance themselves because grief is so terrifying when you look it in the face. And I'm sharing this because lately, so many people are in pain. So many people have struggled with loss. And if you're used to thinking about manifesting what you want and steering your life in a certain direction, when life decides the direction for you, it's really, really hard to go through. And I want you to know that you're not alone. This is what loss is. And it can happen in many ways. For me, it was the loss of my daughter. It could be the loss of a spouse, someone else in your family, a loved one. If you're in the military, you know what loss is about. Illness, crimes, accidents, or even loss through betrayal. It could be loss of a job, a home. There's so many ways to look at it. And when loss happens, you lose yourself too. And I know that from experience. I lost myself. Having this life quake was not on my list of things I wanted to manifest in my life. And one thing that was really hard to, deal with, accept, is that you don't get a do-over. You don't get to go back and be like, okay, I'm going to do this, but it's going to have a different outcome. It's in your face, and you have to live with it, and you do whatever you can. And for me, I became angry, and I started bargaining with God and saying, like, why didn't you take me instead? That's what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to take me first. I'm the parent. I should go before my daughter. And so I spent a lot of time alone, by myself, crying. First it was every minute, and then it became maybe every hour, and after a long time it was maybe every month. But when you have a shakeup of this magnitude, you are changed, but you start to change how you look at the world. And when you look at people, you wonder if they're also touched with grief and loss. And that's, to me, where the seeds of compassion started to grow. You would see someone in the supermarket and wonder, well, what have they gone through? I know they're here and they're shopping for groceries, but is there more to that story? And there's this quote that I love, and it says, there isn't anyone you couldn't love once you've heard their story. And when I read that quote, I think it was in a magazine article that said that Fred Rogers, the children's TV show host, had that in his wallet at all times. And when you hear someone's story, you start to learn that you really have a lot in common with them, and you're not so alone after all. So I landed in therapy after my daughter passed away. And I remember saying to my therapist, I don't know anybody else like me. This is terrible. I just don't know anyone that's gone through what I've gone through. And she told me, well, you have to meet them. You have to make these friends. And I was like, are you kidding me? I have to do that too? That sounds like work. It doesn't sound fun. Like, shouldn't I just know someone else? And the answer was no. You have to kind of put in some effort, because when you start meeting people that can speak the language of your loss and grief, it's like a combat veteran. When they understand each other, when they've been to war and back and they start talking, they speak a language that each other understands. And so I started a group for parents who were grieving the loss of a child. It was a meetup group. And through that, I started meeting other people who could speak my language, and we could talk openly and share. And that was a big step. That was really something key to starting to feel a little bit of movement through my grief. So even though I did have these friends, I did enjoy being alone. I had a little tiny 400 square foot apartment that I rented, because when I experienced the loss of my daughter, what I forgot to share earlier was that I was in Portugal getting ready to give a workshop. And this was my year of big adventure, so I had no home to come back to. So I ended up finding a home after a few months of living at a friend's place. And in my tiny little home, I like to hide. But in the mornings, when it was just about sunrise, I wanted to go out and walk on the beach, because there's something about nature that starts to reconnect you with some part of yourself. And even when you're not healing and going through loss, there's something about nature that lets you know you better. So I started walking my local beach. And it's a very rocky beach, which previously I thought of as a really bad thing, because beaches are supposed to be very smooth sand and really easy to walk on, but my beach was always full of rocks. So I walked with my head down a lot. And as I looked down, I would see all these stones, and I started to pick them up. And what I liked about these stones was, well, they were very interesting, all the shapes and sizes and different colors, but they weren't alive. I didn't have to interact with them. I didn't have to look them in the eye. And they didn't ask me the question that I dreaded, how are you? Which was something that when people asked me that, it made me cry. So these stones started to become my friends, and I would see them in the morning, and I started to really starting to relate to them. So in noticing their shapes and picking them up and looking at them, sometimes I would look at them and say like, oh, I think I'm seeing a face on this. So I would take it and I'd bring it home with me. And I started collecting all these rocks, and I decided I'm gonna be the one that brings out this face. I'm an artist, and I wanna bring this face to life. It's there, I see it. So I started drawing on these stones and putting these faces on them. And that was a start. Something was starting to re-engage me with my former life, and it was through these stones. And it also had me kind of getting a little bit excited about going to the beach in the morning. And that was huge, because just getting up and getting dressed was a big thing for me. But my inner artist was starting to come back to life in some small way. And with these stone faces, I made a bunch of them, and I lined them up on my bookshelf in my little apartment, and I named them the Stone People Tribe. And I started feeling like they had names. I would intuitively feel, oh, this is the name, and they were tribal names, names I never heard of. And I started making stories for each one. And then in time, I was invited to, I think it was a Kryon event in Sedona. And I said, I'm gonna bring these stones with me, and I'm gonna start putting them out into the world. And I put them on my little sales table with my art for people to buy them. And I gave them birth certificates with their stories, with the Stone People Tribe. And people were really drawn to them. They loved them. So my stones got new homes. They went to families. And I know that a psychologist would have a field day trying to tell me the meaning of why I was making stones come to life. And I know it was directly related to losing my daughter. And so from these stone people, I started bringing smaller stones home, because remember, 400 square foot apartment, don't have room for tons of stones. So I started bringing home these smaller stones. And I was drawing little hearts on them and things like that. And I started thinking back to my daughter, Kate. And I remembered thinking, she had depression. Life was hard for her. And sometimes with depression, the smallest thing can make you nosedive, and the smallest thing can uplift you. And so I had these little stones, and I thought, what if on that day where she decided to take an overdose of Tylenol, what if she had come across something that made her have hope, something that uplifted her, something that maybe brought her mood up just a notch, that would have saved her? And so I said, what I'm going to do is take these stones, and I'm going to leave them with a note out in the public, and someone's going to find them, and it's going to help that person. And so I started making these stones, bringing them out, leaving them around Carlsbad, where I live, and leaving them with notes. And I would post it on Facebook, hey, I'm leaving a stone today somewhere, hope you find it. And people would write to me and be like, I want to find it, I want a stone, make me a stone. And I said, I can't make a stone for everybody, but I can teach you how to make them. And so I started a group, another meetup group to make stones. I started a Facebook page, and I named this the Abundant Love Project. So I found people really wanted to do this. People really wanted to help others. And for this story that I'm sharing of loss and grief, what I found was that helping others was helping myself. It was the best form of therapy. It was the way through the grief. It was the way through the loss. And you never do get over loss, and the grief is always there, but it gave movement to it, and it helped me to start reconnect with the world that I had to live in. Just because my daughter died, I was still alive, and I had to keep going. And so I do have stories from the Abundant Love Project. This project spread much further and faster in a way that I never expected when I started this. And I can thank Lee for that, because I was invited to Israel, I think it was 2015, and I was given some time on the stage to speak about this. And in the audience were about 1,000 people from 40 different countries. So when I was through talking, this project spread to a bunch of different countries. And so I'm going to share some of these messages that people, when they found these stones, they would get so excited and post it on my Facebook page. And so I'm going to read about the hope that people got when they would find these stones, and we're going to read it in their exact words, because those are really powerful. So one person wrote, I'm not quite certain what this project is all about yet, but I just found an abundant stone on my sidewalk by my front door when I arrived home last night. I had a very stressful evening. The holidays are very hard and lonely for me, and this year seems exceptionally so. Your brightly colored stone brought tears to my eyes and brought hope that this season might not be so bad after all. For whatever reason your stone was set on my sidewalk, I'll never know. Nor will I know who placed it there, except that it had something to do with the heart of the people involved. Thank you for putting a smile on my face and a tear of hope in my eyes last night. Bless all of you who are involved in this project. And I would get a lot of these messages of people saying, like, I found your stone and it meant so much to me, it gave me hope. So I'm going to share another one here. I have a number of stories to share, but each one is really unique, and these are really, they're honest, they're true, and This is part of what reaching out to others and showing a random act of kindness and compassion will do for someone else. So this person says, I was having a pretty horrible day at my job and found this towards the end of my workday. I really needed this, and it instantly brought joy to my heart and a smile on my face. I have just read your story, and it is bittersweet. How kind and loving to pass on gifts to people you do not know. I struggle with depression, and I'm just now reaching out to people. I have good days and bad, but it seems I have more bad days. And at work, I see many sides to the human race, and most of it is negative. I have thought about suicide, but I have always reached out at my darkest moments because I know that taking my life will only cause more pain to my loved ones. Today, I needed that rock and the note that was with it. It made me stop and think, wow, someone cared enough to leave that for me, and God made sure I got it. I just wish I knew who it was so I could hug them. What a great idea you have come up with, and I thank you so very much. Hugs. And when that person wrote, I wish I knew who left this stone, part of my rule is that these are anonymous. You take the stone with the note, and these are the notes are on my website, abundantloveproject.com, and you print them out and leave it with the stone. But I tell people, don't hang around just to see the look on someone's face when they get it. You just trust that when they find it, it's going to uplift them. And I don't think it works as well when you sit there and try and watch. That's for your benefit. This is for someone else's benefit, so you don't have to watch. So the people that make these stones also get benefit from it. Like I had said before, this is the way when living through compassion, through a compassionate heart, what it does for you. And this person writes, hi, I love what you are doing. I'm disabled and in a wheelchair, unable to get out unless my husband takes me. I'm a potter, so the next time I'm able to go to the studio, I will make some stone-like ceramic objects and decorate them with love messages. I would be so happy to leave messages of hope and love randomly. And she did. She made these little cookie cutter hearts out of clay. She rolled out clay, made cookie cutter hearts, put glaze on them. She sent me pictures. They were beautiful. And she posted, she hid them, and people that found them posted pictures of themselves. So she got to see that. And she said, I rarely get to see people. It blesses my heart to be able to share love with the pottery hearts. I hope it blesses the person who found it with all my heart. Thank you. And it's really special when these stories come in from people because it's not something that you can plan. It's not something that you can always, you can't drum up these stories. They just come in and they're completely honest. And they also have a way of timing, when people find the stones find them is actually how I see it. And so here's a message that came at the perfect time for this person. They write, hi, I found one of your stones at the beach in Queensland, Australia. I'd not heard about what you do before, but when I did, it really hit home for me. I lost my dad 10 months ago. He had suffered a long time with depression and took his own life on his 49th birthday. I find it very hard to deal with what happened, and I traveled to Australia as an easy escape. I now realize there is nothing easy about it at all, and that your stone gave me a lift that I really needed. Thank you very much. And some of the people that find these stones, they find them in such synchronicity that it's a message from someone that they lost on the other side. And there was a person in the UK that shared this message with me. After suddenly losing my dad, who I adored so much, my brother found this plastic bag with a note in it, and it also contained this stone, and when he was taking a walk with my mom. This was placed on a stone post in a crevice, and as they read the note inside, they began to feel warmth and comfort in their hearts. This just seems so unreal, as we have only lost my dad recently. This has put a smile on all of my family and has made life easier. As we know, it was a message from above. Whoever placed it and made and created this stone certainly gave our family strength and hope to carry on. I thank you so much for this kind act, and I'm full of gratitude. Those kind of messages, when they come in, they warm my heart immensely. And it warms my heart because it helped someone else. Their day was made better by someone just making a very small act, drawing a heart on a stone. And when I started this project, I kind of decided everyone knows what the shape of a heart means. It means love. You don't need a language for that. If you pick up a stone and it has a heart on it, you don't need a language for you to instantly get a message from that. And on the back of each stone is written, "You are loved." And these notes come in so many languages that people have translated on the website that they can be printed out so that the person can read the note in their own language. It's pretty amazing. And here's another message from the other side that someone received through the stone. Yesterday, my stepdad died. He was in a car accident 3 weeks ago, and he couldn't fight any longer. Today, I walked down to the beach where I live in North Wales and found this pebble. The person who left it has no idea what this meant to me today. Choose love. And this one was an especially powerful one that I'm going to share with you. There's a woman in Queensland who I met through Kryon events, and she's probably made over 1,000 of these stones. She is prolific. She has an extremely kind heart. And so she sent me this message that said, I've sprinkled about 60 or more love stones along the river park on the Noosa River in Queensland, Australia, in the last 3 months. It's a lovely area of more than 1 kilometer in distance along the river. Thousands of locals and tourists enjoy this area daily. One of my friends was walking there recently, and she talked to a lady who she didn't know. And the lady told her that one of the lady's friends was at the river and seriously considering suicide. And then he found a love stone, and it changed his way of thinking. That one touches me every time I read it, because it has a direct connection to my daughter, Kate, and why I started this in the hopes that one little positive, uplifting note, message can change someone's way of thinking in that moment and keep them going. And as I said before, I think the stone has some kind of a cosmic intelligence where they find you. So here's a story where the stone finds you, because I've seen it where I have put a stone on a bench, and okay, I cheated back in the beginning. When I first did this, I tried to watch somebody find the stone for the very reason that I now tell people, don't try and see the expression on someone's face, just trust they're gonna love it, they're gonna find it, the right person gets it. And I left it on this bench at an outdoor shopping center, and I sat at another bench across from it, and I watched people come and go, sitting on that bench, getting up, sitting down. Nobody found the stone. And that was my message: stop watching and go away. Someone will find it. So here's a message of a stone finding a person. This person writes, I often walk the Watkins Glen State Park, enjoying the peaceful serenity surrounding the amazing trails. Today, as I was hiking there, I saw a small baggie and wondered how none of the other hikers saw it or checked it out. I thought it was someone's trash, so I picked it up to dispose of, only to find this amazing stone and beautiful letter inside. I started crying. I've had a roller coaster life the past several months, and this made my day. It was truly meant for me. Thank you to whomever placed that stone in my path. And some of you, maybe all of you, know Amber Wolf. She does the Lemurian Sisterhood. She's a good friend of Lee and Monika and myself. And she was in New Zealand with Lee, and I think it might have been a tour group and some seminars she was doing there with Lee. And she sent me a text message, and I'm going to share this with you. It's a story of synchronicity. Yesterday, I was doing a healing session for someone who was incredibly sad and wounded from the loss of her sister 9 years ago. She told me the best thing that had happened to her since that time was finding a rock nestled in a tree that was painted with hearts and said, "You are loved." I was speechless, but I know where that rock came from. It came from your heart, your creation. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for the joy that you're bringing, and for the love that you're sharing. Our small planet has been touched by love because of you. Isn't that nice to hear from half a world away? And yes, it was wonderful to hear. It blew my mind. But I'm also going to add, it's not really because of me. I think of myself as the catalyst that started this project. There are so many people around the world making these stones. So all of these thanks are for everybody that does this. I'm just the conduit, the person who runs the Facebook page and the website. But these are thanks for everybody. So there was a guest here on the Healing Circle maybe a month ago, I think, and her name was Suzanne Geisman. And when she was on, I had told Lee, I said, I've met her before. She and I have Zoomed and Skyped and met each other. But here's the story of an amazing heart connection, how we met each other on Valentine's Day around 2017. So I received an email from this woman that contacted me through my website that said, "I just learned of you today and your artwork. It's not just speaking to me, but it's shouting. Are you by any chance going to be at the Conscious Life Expo in LA this weekend?" Well, someone had given her, I think, one of my card decks, and she really resonated with the art on it. But I wrote back to her and I said, "No, I won't be there, but how about we meet up another weekend?" And she said, "I can't do that. I live in Florida. I'm just here. I'm giving a talk at this LA Conscious Life Expo, and then I'm heading back out." So I thought, oh, too bad. I wrote back to her and said, "Gee, it would have been nice, sorry I won't be there," and that sort of thing. It was a missed connection, and maybe it should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. So a few weeks later, somehow her name popped up into my thoughts again, and I'm thinking about this woman, Suzanne Geisman, and she gave a talk at the Conscious Life Expo. Maybe I should Google her. I wonder what she spoke about. I wonder what she does. So I did. I Googled her. And on her website, I found that it was more than a coincidence. She was an intuitive medium who had lost her pregnant stepdaughter when she was killed by a very rare lightning strike. So we had this in common. So my level of intrigue about her really shot up. And I decided to write back to her and tell her about that we both shared this grief and loss. We had both lost daughters really unexpectedly. And so I wrote back to her and I told her about losing my daughter Kate, the formation of the Abundant Love Project. And I got a reply from her the next morning. And the subject line was in all caps, and it said, "You will love this," with exclamation points galore at the end of it. So I excitedly clicked and I opened this up, and she writes, "Well, Deb, first your work shouted at me, and now your email made me gasp so loudly. My husband said, 'What, are you okay?'" And she goes on to write, "Why? Because this morning in meditation, my guides gave me a great teaching. And I said, 'I know this is you, my guides, and this teaching is real, but just for fun, since I teach about the practice of asking for a specific sign, send me a sign of the name Katie,' a name that randomly came into her head at the moment. And there was your email telling me about your daughter, Kate." And there was synchronicity there. And she said, "I'm sure your Kate was one time a Katie," and she was. "And what more could I ask for, especially in the context of coming from another light worker such as yourself on Valentine's Day, since we both work from the heart?" And she was stunned at the synchronicity. So she writes in this same email, "You must read my book, Wolf's Message, and how he gave heart-shaped stones to everyone. It was, in fact, the last thing he did before he was killed by lightning. And guess what? Someone gave me one of your project's love stones last June. I love, love, love your project, and will promote it now more than ever. And so I did. I went and I read her book, Wolf's Message. And it was a true story about a young man named Wolf. And he passed away when he was struck by lightning, just like her stepdaughter. And he connected with Suzanne and his parents through Suzanne in the spirit realm. So I'm reading this book, and I'm about 10 pages into the book when I gasped and my jaw dropped, because there was still another synchronicity. Wolf passed away at the age of 29, which was the same age as my daughter Kate when she passed away. And not only that, and not only he gave out heart-shaped stones to everybody before he died on the exact same day and month that she did, but 4 years earlier. And I was just overwhelmed by these synchronicities that just wove themselves together. It started with a woman seeing my art and saying, hey, are you going to be at the Conscious Life Expo? And the story just took on a life of its own. The synchronicities all lined up. And I emailed her back. I was in disbelief. And she said to me, after she read what I had written to her, she said, I'm really sensing your daughter right now. She's very excited and is taking responsibility for bringing us together. And whether you believe in the life beyond this life or not, all I'm going to say is what transpired was an incredible story of coincidences, synchronicity, synergy, in the way that a message can route itself to make sure that it gets to the right person at the right time. And that's what these stories that I shared with you just now are, and that's what the Abundant Love Project is. It's getting a compassionate message. You are loved. It's so simple. It's 3 words and a heart drawn on a stone. And it just touches people. And it really helped me move through my grief. And I know that so many of you listening, watching this today are in a position like I was, like I am. Like I said, grief, it's like an overlay. It follows you the rest of your life, but you learn how to live again. And I'm going to share with you what the notes on the stone say. And it says, you are receiving this handmade stone as a gift because you are loved. Someone made this just for you. Make a wish holding your gift and know that you are a treasured gift to many others. And if you'd like to know more about where the stone came from, you can visit the Abundant Love Project on Facebook, post your stone and a story, and inspire others. And that is my story of moving through from being in a state of shock, being immobilized.
And throughout all of that, I am sure there are viewers out there like me who were sitting there wiping away the tears that were springing to their eyes, as they were, because there is this love emotion that connects us to the energy of the people that are going through this, who feel the love of the Creator despite all of that grief and tragedy. Yeah.
What we want to do now is to, sorry, I'm a little choked up.
I know.
I made it through, and usually that's one of my superpowers.
Folks, we know her story.
Yes.
And we've known her for a long time, and this is just a beautiful thing that she has to say to all of us. And if you didn't hear it, helping others helps yourself. This is one of the things we've taught forever, and she's experienced it so much. What we want to do is to let you know we're not going to let you go now, really. We're going to say goodbye, but we would like to show you her stones, and we would like to show you some the beautiful artwork she does. We're going to put a little music with it, and ask you even to meditate if you wish to after this. And I want to close this by saying, if it's all right, unless you have something more to say.
I just want to remind those who are watching that they can go to the abundantloveproject.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Abundant Love Project, without the word the, but yeah.
So abundantloveproject.com. And there you can find all the information you need to create your own stones to hide for others.
Finally, before we start, a little vignette here of the stone so you can actually see her beautiful artwork is this. I have said this to you before. Every stone around the world that has been created through the little people and like that has an invisible name on it. And it's Kate. This is her legacy. And the hundreds and hundreds of people that have been helped is her legacy. Thanks for being with us, folks. We'll see you again.